rewrite. Welcome, everyone. This week, I have a special guest that I'm very excited for you to get to know better because I've had several years to get to know her now in several different capacities in my corporate world relationship when I was working as a consultant, and then afterwards as a friend. And then afterwards, again, the relationship changed again as being hired to come in and do some of the storytelling and training and things like that our company does with OMH Creative and Storied Coaching. And so through that, I have had the pleasure of knowing the person that you're going to learn about today. Her name is Carissa Allen, and she has been a technology leader for a number of years now, in and out of the marketing space, as well as leadership roles in different organizations. And I'm going to have her introduce herself a little bit more right now. But the topic we're going to be talking about today, and that Carissa got fired up about, and I was so excited she wanted to talk about today with me, is quiet quitting. What is it? Does it really exist? Is it something that was made up in science fiction? We're going to discuss all the things around quiet quitting and kind of, our thoughts around it. And I'm not going to try and color it too much right now so that we can jump into it. But before we do that, Carissa, would you please introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you. Sure. And kind of what's brought you to this point in your career.
Sure, absolutely. So thank you again for the opportunity. And it's kind of funny. I was thinking we should just bring a recorder to like a Thai food lunch and just like put it down and press record, and there it is, right?
It's where our best ideas happen, right? Over Thai food.
We solve for world peace over Thai. It's amazing. But so, yep. Hi, I'm Carissa, and I've been in the high-tech industry now for almost 30 years. Don't anybody start doing math. And
right there with you.
Yeah. And as far as my roles go, I have, there's the persona at work, which has really evolved. I was thinking about just like the past 5 years. I've been so blessed to learn so much and have different experiences, but really, as you said, I've stepped more into a leadership role, which I thoroughly enjoy. I have sales, marketing, partner management, operations backgrounds. I had a lot of fun for the past 3 years working with Microsoft Store and meeting with retailers around the world and just really having business conversations about what does it mean to empower your frontline workers? What does it mean to have really meaningful like customer connections and make those and the store of the future. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm about connections, I think, at work, a lot of it, and mentoring. And then, my side hustle is I have 3 children, all teenagers.
I love that you phrase it that way. Your side hustle is the fact that you are a full-time parent.
Yeah, I add that too. My oldest is about to go off to university, and I'm starting to realize how much I'm going to miss her. And
oh, wow. Yeah.
There's a lot going on, but
it's a tender time.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is.
And also I don't want to brush past, like, this is the kind of leader that I have observed that Carissa is. When I first started working with her as a consultant, as well as when I started working with her with some of our storied trainings and things like that in a different capacity, she was a leader at a time when leaders were really needed, because we went into the pandemic and all of a sudden, all these retail stores. So anyone that's listening, if you ever walked into a brick and mortar Microsoft store anywhere in the world, like, part of Carissa's job was to work with those entire teams, those retail teams, to create the kind of experience that you came to expect when you walked into one of those stores. And so all of those people needed help and support during the pandemic. Yeah. And those stores all got closed down almost overnight. All those people were sent home, and they needed to be retrained. They needed to be reassured. They needed leaders to be able to tell them things were going to be okay and that there was a path after this if the stores didn't open again. And so that was a really specific time to be a leader in retail at Microsoft. So I don't want to gloss over that.
That's very kind. And I was fortunate to have a great support network to do that. You're right, though. And that experience has really shaped me. And it's something I will never, ever forget. And the other thing that people needed at that time that I remember talking about quite a bit was boundaries. And because if you think about the retail workforce, they were told what their shift was, not only what their shift was, but where they would stand on the floor, right?
Yeah.
And then it was all of a sudden, just like the rest of the world, here's a laptop, go home. And you don't have that support net anymore. And man, did I learn a lot. And I
Yeah, a lot of
saw
people that are very young in their careers
very,
at
and
Microsoft stores too. Yeah.
yeah, and but the resilience and just the, okay, what's next, right? Where I don't know if you would have seen that everywhere, right? Because this whole
Hmm.
group of people, what they do is they connect with customers. Okay, we're back to that. And they show people something cool. And so that when we went with them and we said, hey, we have this idea of you can still do that from home and you're going to help people figure out how they're going to work from home. You're going to train them on teams, right? You're going to empower
Hmm.
people. Man, I saw people who thought that they did one thing. I saw them just blossom into being able to do so much more. And now they've paved paths into the company in different ways. So yeah, it was it was a gift. Honestly, it was tough. And I do think something else we could talk about at some point is I think we're already forgetting all these lessons from the pandemic that we
You
learned.
know what? I think you're right. And I
I'm
think
nervous about it.
yes, I absolutely think you're right. I think there are threads of that maybe that we can pull on as well when we
Yeah.
talk about this phenomenon
Yeah.
of, or this thing that was invented called quiet quitting.
Yeah.
And I think there are multiple threads of things that probably led into each other, the pandemic being a huge one, where there was a breaking point. And one of the things might be what you just talked about, where a bunch of people were sent home. All of a sudden they're working in this environment.
Yeah.
And some of us that had been consultants or in a space and technology that
Yeah.
maybe a field or a vertical that was a little more used to being productive at home and needing to put some guardrails on as far as when work time was and when non-work time was. And some
Mm-hmm.
of us did better jobs at that than
Yeah.
others. I know I definitely have done a bad job of that in the past and had to learn
Mm-hmm.
through hitting my head and kind of through my own actions and behavior, I made it okay for people to contact me at 9 p.m. and I would respond right away. Things like
Yes.
that. So it's like you're teaching your leaders how it's okay to interact with you, even if
Correct.
it's after hours.
Correct.
And that got to a point where with Teams and with Zoom and with our devices in our pockets at
Mm-hmm.
all times, Slack, doesn't really matter what you were using, we were always available. And when we got sent home, a lot of the workforce did, all of
Mm-hmm.
a sudden that started to come to a head where instead of us feeling way more rested, which you might think at first, like, oh, we're all going to be
Yeah.
at home. We're going to
Right.
be so much more rested. Burnout happened faster and more often.
Yes. Yes.
And I wonder if that led into what employers started to see as a turning of that story, that
Mm-hmm.
paradigm of you're lucky to have a job.
Yeah. Yeah.
And whatever we ask you to do, and when we ask you to do it, you're just going to do it.
Yeah. Because what else are you
That
going to
kind of
do?
from the leftover
Yeah.
from the society, the industrial revolution.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of like still a lot of that residue of like you come in and you punch a clock and you pull a lever and like you work with the company for X amount of years and then there's a pension and like all these things happen, but that's not the reality anymore.
Mm-mm. No.
And I just wonder if that maybe was the starting of the snowball rolling down the hill to where this phenomenon of quiet quitting started happening, which I really think was just leaders starting to realize that people were setting firmer boundaries a lot more often and a lot more people were doing it.
So I think
What did you notice?
so. Yeah, it's interesting because your perspective is really that's not how I had thought about it, and I really think that's incredibly valid because I was thinking about it from the point of view of the person who's feeling it,
Mm,
and yeah, it would be really interesting to find out how this term was coined and where it's been used,
yeah.
and because the story of how I heard about quiet quitting, I'm sure there were articles in the New York Times or whatever where I
Hmm.
get my information. What happened was, though, someone very close to me, very near and dear to me, but not physically close, texted me one day and she sent me this article and she's like, there's a name for what I've been feeling. And it was an article about quiet quitting. And I read it and I was like, I texted her back and I'm like, okay, hold on. Cool. I understand that. But quiet quitting has this negative connotation. I mean, it implies, I feel, it implies laziness, right? Or passive aggressive behavior on the part of the
Hmm.
employee or other things like that. Or at least that was my interpretation. And I'm like, okay, wait, hold on. Let's just talk about what you're feeling right now. You've been a woman in high tech for 25 plus years, which means we've had some really interesting experiences and we've had to
Yeah.
fight our way through this.
Hmm.
We literally went through a pandemic. And as I mentioned earlier, it does feel like everyone's like almost gaslighting to the point of, oh, what? No, that didn't happen. But we went through a pandemic, which changed everything and put a
Hmm.
lot of stress on different roles within a family, right? And different roles within
Yes.
the workforce. Okay.
Yep.
Now we're in a phase of high tech where there are reorgs and layoffs and lots of things just going on in the high tech industry that is very angst causing, right? You don't feel
Hmm.
like you're in control. In the case of this person, she also had two teenagers. One moved out of the house, went off to college, right? So you've got that phase of your life going on. Elderly parents who are now having health issues, that is also falling on us to take care of them. And then there's the whole physical health thing, because let's just be honest, right? You get to a point, hormones start like falling off cliffs, and there's so much.
Absolutely.
I basically just sit back to her. I'm like, you have nothing more to give. It's
Hmm.
not that you've stopped giving. It's not that you have stopped working. It's you don't have very much more to give right now. And so you need to just kind of like give yourself a little space and grace on that. But
Hmm.
and and I want to ask you, it's like, so that's my interpretation of a lot of what I'm seeing. I think people are tired. I think that we were in a hyper mode of
Hmm.
productivity when
Yes.
we were in lockdown and there was nothing else to do besides that, and whatever, like sourdough starters or whatever else people were
Exactly.
doing. Some people
Yeah.
cleaned their houses. Mine, that was the opposite. But
Well,
yeah.
we were in them a lot more. It was a lot harder. Someone once described living with children in the house and trying to keep the house clean as brushing your teeth while eating Oreos. And I think that was the pandemic
Yes.
perfectly
Yeah,
described.
that's
Yeah.
awesome. But so that's my take on it. I don't know. What do you think about that? I mean, that's kind of how I feel about
No,
quiet
I think
quitting.
that's completely valid. And I love that you're bringing up different perspectives and helping keep us accountable of being
Yeah.
aware of them. Because I kind of blended one of like from, maybe what leaders were feeling as a
Yeah.
business owner. I'm going to have that lens, but also
Sure.
the lens of people as a consultant brain working from home, clients asking more and more
Yep.
and more of you.
Yeah.
But also like for people that were already working in corporate America, already functioning at 25 years plus
Hmm.
at a high capacity, spinning all the plates. And we
Yep.
can, like you said, let's not let that go unsaid that a lot of times women in relationships that have kids are also doing a lot of the emotional labor with
Yep.
kids on top of it. That amped up during the pandemic.
Yep.
They were responsible for more things.
Yeah.
Hopefully you had a partner that started pitching in more as well, but that didn't always happen.
Right.
And then you are in an industry, specifically with enterprise software and technology, where, at least in the US, the behavior that I see is that if you're a high performer, your reward is that they're going to give you more.
Yes. Absolutely.
And so that's the norm that you're used to as
Hmm.
being a high performer is your reward for performing high and getting a good review is they give you more and they give you more and they give you
Yeah.
more and they give you more. And then you start experiencing the things you were talking about with our parents getting older,
Yeah.
with our kids getting older, with our own health issues that we
Hmm.
need to do. We need to take ourselves and our own health
Yep.
more seriously and rest more seriously
Yeah.
so that we're not redlining all the time. Something's got to give. And
Hmm.
if companies are going to keep in the mindset of like, no more, no more, no more, no
Yeah.
more, no more,
Yeah.
at some point something's going to give, and it's probably not going to be the non-human element.
You would
So
hope. You would hope, right? And
yeah.
it's super interesting too. A couple points on that, which is one, it's been interesting to watch how people I called it adrenaline resistance. I'm going to make up my own term here or something, but it used to be that
Do it.
adrenaline, that more was in some way rewarding to a
Yeah,
lot of
for
A
high
type
performers
personalities.
especially.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
And
exciting.
and and
Yeah.
now I think people are just like, because to your point, I used to joke we were in emergency remote operations for a long period in store. That's what they called it when
Oh wow.
all of this happened, where we shut down the
Hmm.
stores really quick and pivoted people. But they left the name in place for too long. And I was one of the people going, we need to change this name because you cannot be in an emergency this long. Right. And
Heightened anxiety
yeah, it's to your
or
point, you,
no.
you
Yeah.
said it. It's the redlining. It's
Yeah.
like my anxiety, and I'm usually pretty on top of it. I am aware of it now. Right.
Hmm.
And that's really interesting to me, is that I think the world has finally hit the that's enough kind of level.
I
Um,
love that.
yeah,
That's perfect. That's almost like a period on the end of the sentence. Like that's where we
yeah,
get to the point where universally
hmm,
leaders, employees, managers, executives,
yeah,
everyone is feeling like, okay, I
yep,
am dealing with anxiety and burnout and
yeah,
dissatisfaction and all kinds of things like I never have before. Is it just me?
hmm,
Okay, I need to put some guardrails up. You
yep,
start seeing people go, okay, I need to do some boundaries. People getting coaching, getting life
yes,
coaching, going to therapy like never before because they need it because of the pandemic and work stuff. And all of
mhm,
a sudden they're like, oh, that never was sustainable. It's just like the lobster being put in the pot and
yep,
the
yep,
boiling keeps getting turned up and they don't notice it until it's boiling now.
yeah, absolutely.
And so quiet quitting starts to happen, which is really, I think, just people like structures,
Yeah,
companies, not real humans, but companies overall noticing that they're having record attrition.
yeah,
People are saying, hey, my job description is this. You keep asking me to do
yeah,
more. I'm not going to do that anymore.
right.
I'm not going to be, for like you said, in emergency services
Yeah,
anymore. And
yeah,
everyone's expected just to keep giving until we keel over.
yeah,
Like I need time and space. I come to work, I do this thing,
yes,
and I wonder if as a part of the cure of this, instead of feeling like the employers feeling like they have to put the employees back in their place and like we need to get the power dynamic back in our
yeah,
area and all that kind of stuff,
yes,
maybe it's just that very simply leaders, I'm not going to say employers, I'm just going to say leaders, okay?
hmm,
Leaders need to be clear with the result they want from someone in a role.
yeah,
And once they hit that result or they're producing that result, stop rewarding them with asking for more,
yes,
with pushing their boundaries out more
yes,
and more and more and more,
yep,
especially without additional compensation. Some people might want that if they're earlier in their career, but
yeah.
don't penalize the people that don't want that.
And that's a big thing right there. Because going back to quiet quitting, in the sense that it's not that people don't want to work, it's not that they don't want to contribute. I go back to what I said, they have nothing more to give, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
no quitting involved here. And yeah, I like how you said that. There was something else I was going to say, and I can't remember what it is, but it'll come back to me.
But yeah, no, but I mean, it is. I mean, it is that, right? It's like, I don't want, you said you needed this result. I'm giving you that result. You're asking
Mm-hmm.
for more now, but you're not giving me more compensation. A lot of
No,
times you're like, oh, it'll put you on the fast track or whatever. It's like people are just
uh,
calling BS
I took
on
myself
all
off
this
that fast
stuff.
track years ago. Yes. And what companies do, though, is that, and again, they feel like they're addressing it, because you'll get all one line of communication at a company: do more, we have to do more with less, which I really wish people would figure out how triggering that phrase is.
It's not
And
my favorite slogan that
no,
an enterprise software company has ever come
no,
up with.
no, no, but then they send out it's mental health month mails, and here's all your
Yeah.
resources. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I understand, because I'm really big on, when I talk with people and do coaching, I'm like, we can hold multiple things. Okay. It's not necessarily
Mm-hmm.
one or the other. And so I'm trying to hold all these things, but I'm just not, I don't see enough effort right now.
Mm-hmm.
And also, to your point, so there's this whole thing going on right now, not to take us too sideways, but
No, I love sideways. Do it.
in a perfect world, we should work until we're in our 70s. We have lots to contribute, and it's
To
better for
give.
your mental health to stay engaged, like literally
Yes.
the brain to stay
Yep.
engaged. Well, if we're supposed to do that, we drastically have to change how we're working, especially in high tech. We
Yes.
drastically, and this might be what we're stumbling on, what we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
It's going to start with this idea of quiet quitting, but I want to get rid of those words because it blames the person, and like I said, it implies a personality defect. But it's the boundaries, and how do we set up these boundaries, and how do we come to an agreement with a company to keep us productive? So it's
Yes.
not just, I burned out, so I retired early, or whatever.
Do you think that part of it is the expectation that for the same role or result, you are hiring someone that the requirement of the 25-year-old
Mm-hmm.
and the ways that they can use their energy is the same job description or expectation for the 65-year-old?
You
You know what I
know,
mean? Because
yeah, you know what
as
you
a
mean.
25-year-old, I had energy to give in different areas,
Right.
and those areas were not wisdom.
No, they
Those
weren't.
areas where I'm all into learn. I want to learn from
Yeah.
people. I can spend more hours on this because I don't have a family yet. I can change what I'm doing and adapt and do all kinds of
Yep.
different things. And that takes a lot of energy. And we need that.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are people that have earned wisdom
Yes.
and know from experience
Yes.
that this didn't work in this situation. I think that if we take this and this and put them together,
Yep.
that will work better. And they're leaders
Yeah.
now because they
Yeah.
have the wisdom, they have the experience, but they don't have the energy level, the
Mm-hmm.
physical energy level of a 25-year-old. Let's
Or
just
they have
call
more
that out.
commitments. Yeah. No, it's
Yeah.
totally true. It's totally true. And I'm just going to push on this, as I tend to do on this subject, which is you're describing diversity just in a different way.
Yes.
And our high tech still does not see age as a diversity factor. They just don't. Sorry, I've had this conversation way too many times. I still just don't think it's there yet.
Oh,
And
especially in marketing.
yeah.
But
yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. In our field,
you need some
especially.
fresh ideas. Go get somebody young.
Get somebody right out of college. They must have better ideas.
Totally. Here's the deal, because like you want to pair these people up, and you don't want to take away the energy from the young person. You don't want to take away the opportunity to learn, because people learn differently. Some people have to run into that wall a few times to learn. Peace. Other people can learn from watching and learning from the one. That's me.
Carissa learned from, if you're not watching this and you're just listening to us today, you saw me raise my hand when she said need to run into walls several times.
Yeah.
And then there's the smarter people like Carissa that just go like, oh, Aaron ran into the wall again. I'm going to note that down and not try that.
Yeah. So, but yeah. And anyway, so yes, we're talking about the fact that what we're really stumbling on, what I think we're really getting to is a couple things. You have brilliantly said boundaries. Boundaries are key. But also this, we have to change the way we're working. We just have to. And that is the thing that I'm so worried about with coming out of this pandemic that nobody wants to talk about, and I understand why. But we're not pulling through the learnings. And I remember you and I talked during the pandemic about, man, we got to carry something's good's got to come out of this. We got to carry this through.
Let's not brush under the rug and just forget about it. It can be tempting to do, but we learned some things during it, and let's not lose that just honestly from deciding that we didn't like the way we felt then. And so we're not going to take those learnings. I think this might be a good time for us to transition as well to talking about intentionally. One of those lessons is to be intentional about taking space and the time we need.
Yes.
And I think that there are two ways to talk about this. One of them is from the boundaries employee perspective or worker perspective, I would say, and being clear. Yeah. And then one of them is from the employer or the large mechanism perspective of the way the structure is set up to have downtime. What are your thoughts about that? Like which of those angles do you want to discuss first?
So, because we also just went through this other shift at Microsoft, which is we went from accruing paid vacation to discretionary time off. I don't know if you're aware.
Is that the whole unlimited PTO thing?
That's it, right? So if you're from the outside, no offense, everyone's always like, oh, you get unlimited vacation. And I'm like, you really think that's how they're thinking about it? Do you really think that they sat back and said, oh, let's just get everybody all the vacation they want? It's different because now it's not something you've earned that is like a little bit more sacred. This has taken away a boundary, in my opinion, because it's just discretionary time off. So people can it's not like something you've earned and you need to take or else you're going to lose it. And so people can kind of come in and say, well, can you just come back for a day or can we just get you for an hour? I'm not saying I've seen that, but again, right? And so from a work point of view, I don't know, maybe it is an opportunity to learn boundaries more. Maybe this is good, right? In the sense that leaders need to demonstrate taking time off and being off of email, right? And need to support.
Because we take our cues from our leaders. How do they respond to messages after 5? Yeah. Do they expect a response from that question they asked at 7:30 p.m.
Yes.
by 7 a.m. the next morning?
Yep.
Are they blowing you up, to respond to that? You are, that is culture. That's how culture is created.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, and I do think also just, we go back to this space. I think you said power earlier too, right? And I think that there is this idea of, if you feel like somebody has power over you, or you feel like you don't have a right to take their time, then we don't take the space we need, right, when we're around that person. And oftentimes when I'm working with women in high tech, one of the things we talk about is when we finally do get an opportunity to speak in a meeting or with an executive or with our boss, it's just like everything falls out of our mouth because we know we're going to be interrupted, or we know we're not going to get this opportunity again. And so one of the things that I work with myself on, and I've seen some improvement in other people, is take your space, take your time. You have every right to be here, and put up a boundary or say, I was speaking, right? Or something along those lines. And I think that will also help with all of this, right? If that level of engagement, and that's so important. That's so important for us.
It is. And I saw a wonderful, just a graphic on this the other day, and I was like, oh, that's the way I need to think about it. And my brain's not there yet. I need to be better at practicing this. But I think I'm going to try and keep this at the front of my brain when I'm thinking about being intentional about taking space, taking time off, especially in our field where a lot of times with marketing, it's closely, connected to creativity and coming up with ideas and different approaches and knowing how an audience needs to respond to something. And when something stops working, what is engaging and interesting to them now? And like, this is constantly going through our heads, and you need to be able to inhale, after you've exhaled for a certain amount of time. And I saw a great description of this, and it was just like showing one of those meters on a car or a dashboard or something, just the easy, it's green, then it goes into yellow, and then it goes into red. And the predominant thinking, and I know I'm this way, and I probably need to sit with it for a while and get better at it, is I think that when I'm in the red zone, when I've gone from green past yellow into red, then I need to start thinking about taking time off because I'm burning out. Where it would be way more effective if I did that in the first third of the yellow.
Brilliant. Yes.
Because it takes less time to recover then, actually. If I do it more often, it takes less time. If I get into the red, statistically, it shows that if you wait until you're deep into the red, it takes you so much more time to recover and to be productive for yourself, for your organization, for your family, for everyone. And so I think I need to be better about that.
Well, I think we all do. And just like, I think it was a few years ago that I got into this conversation at Microsoft with execs about, we have programs for when everything goes code red. And I was actually with some friends and talked about this once on a different podcast, where it's like, we have programs to address when it was code red. Let's talk about before it gets that point, right?
Let's talk about yellow.
Let's talk about yellow. And that's a really good name for another podcast, by the way.
Coming soon, folks. Carissa has already TM'd it and reserved the website.
But we need to help people with that. We really need to help people. And then we can go back to the whole quiet quitting. They're in red. Are they in red? They're in red.
And have been in red probably for a long time.
Very long time. And so we need to get better. I know that was something I've really tried to work with my family on. And I'm sure I've done an okay, but not great job of it, is like understanding boundaries and understanding when it's time to stop, take 3 breaths, maybe go for a walk, and then come back to the pre-calc homework, right? And then come back, you know what I mean?
Because they're learning from us too, right? We're leaders. If we're leaders in our household, our kids are observing our behavior as well. Is redlining the expectation constantly from your parents? Guess what you're probably going to start to do and how you think you're supposed to operate.
Because that's what success looks like,
Yeah, right? The stakes are pretty high here, people.
I'm really not a downer kind of person. I'm actually quite like cheery and stuff like that. But I'm just, this is real stuff. This is real stuff we need to talk about more.
Yes, I absolutely agree. And especially, like I said, we could have talked in lots of different directions around this. But I think that if we know that we need to stop pointing the finger. Right. Employers calling people quiet quitters. Or it's not what it is. What you're noticing is that there's a shift going on. And we've jokingly, especially I know with lots of my colleagues, I know I've done it with you too, Carissa, I'll talk about the fact that with these global companies, us in the US, they make fun of us in Europe. Like they're like, I'm on my 5-week vacation. Like, don't talk to me.
It's August. What are you
It's
doing?
August. Why are you sending me an email? First of all, they're not responding to your email.
Right.
When they do respond to it, it will be 5 weeks later, and they don't feel bad about it.
Yeah.
And their manager and their manager's manager is not like kind of giving them side eye that they weren't working or didn't jump on some call randomly. Like no one does that. That's your time. And I love that. I've even heard the extreme of that case in Germany, where, if you heard this, there are certain companies in Germany where, are efficiency experts, where you will get a response email, and the email says this person is on leave. Any email sent or received received during this time will not be read.
Yes.
It has been automatically deleted.
Yes.
I return on this date. You can contact me then.
Yes.
Like, amazing.
Well, in some areas, labor laws almost dictate that they turn off their servers, right? That you cannot contact them. And someone also very dear to me who used to work at Microsoft and is now elsewhere, he used to literally put on his oof out of office. He'd be like, I'm out until this date. Here's somebody else you can contact. If you really want to talk to me, send this mail back to me after this date, because I will be deleting my inbox when I get back. And people were like, and I'm like, ooh, that's good.
I think that should be normal.
Yes.
That should be normal. Think about it. The only reason it's not normal is because we think that we should have to be productive while we're resting.
Yeah.
And that if we are resting, that we have to make up for it or punish ourselves by digging ourselves out. And that's what people call it. The first couple of days when someone's back from a break, they're like, oh, probably don't contact them. They're probably digging themselves out.
Yeah.
Why do we do that to each other?
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, I completely agree. I could also take this to the narcissistic side of, as you and I have talked about, no one's ever died from a marketing emergency. Everything will be okay if you are off of email or Teams.
It'll be fine. Prioritize your mental health, people. Yes. Prioritize your breaks.
Yes. Your family.
It's okay to make those decisions.
Yes, exactly.
And know that, yes, for the short term, there might be people where you get some side eye, but
do they really
end, you are the one that has to indicate to others around you what your boundaries are. And if you go back on them, if you answer those emails at 7 p.m., you are telling people that you've set a boundary, but you're not going to enforce it.
Exactly.
Carissa, thank you so much for talking with me about this today. I know that we're going to have lots of other topics we can talk about.
Oh, yes. Sorry we went on and on and on there a bit. Kind of knew that.
No, this is perfect. This is exactly what I wanted. I wanted people to be included in the conversation, to let them know that, hey, this is happening across industries, but especially with high performers in high performing industries, like white collar, blue collar, it doesn't matter. Like, for a long time, there was this thing going on. And we getting asked more and more and more of, and then the finger was pointed that you're quiet quitting because you're saying no more. And I just don't think that that's really the way for us to operate together, whether you're the employer or the employee. We have to move on to something different and change that conversation to be able to have healthy, active lives, like to your point, well into our 60s and 70s, and allow wisdom and youth to be able to work together. In a cohesive way.
Yes. If not, it literally is the definition of insanity if you're just relearning the same thing over and over again. So
we need to learn from this. Let's not waste that time, people, that we were in the pandemic. Let's learn some things and hopefully make things better for us and for the people that come after us. All right.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Carissa.
Pleasure. All right. Thanks, friend. Take care.